What is a breath test and how can it be used against me? My name is Alan Fowler and I am the owner and founding attorney of Key West Criminal Defense, where we believe that one bad mistake or wrongful accusation shouldn't ruin the rest of your life. Now, if you are an adult with a driver's license, it's hard to imagine that you have not heard of a breath test or a breathalyzer, but in case you're out there or in case you want to know more information, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, in Florida and really most states throughout the country, perhaps all 50 states, when you receive a driver's license, it is considered to be a privilege that the state is granting you. So it's not a right necessarily, it is a privilege, and because it's a privilege, the state government can put certain conditions on the exercise of that privilege. And one of the conditions that the state of Florida and every other state has done is that you are required in advance to give implied consent to participate in a breath test if a police officer finds probable cause that you have committed the offense of driving under the influence. That's a very long-winded way of saying that if you are arrested, you are, technically speaking, required to participate in a breath test pursuant to the vantage point of the state government. Now, in real terms, the police can't put a gun to your head and make you participate in a breath test, but there are penalties if you decline to do so. Now, when it comes to the application or the administration of the breath test, Florida differs from many other states. You may have seen commercials and you may live in a state where there's a scene of a police officer who's pulled over a driver on the side of the road, and the police officer is holding some sort of plastic gun type thing to the driver's face who's blowing into that. That does happen in some states. In Florida, we don't do it that way. The Florida legislature has decided that before a police officer is allowed to request a breath test, that you have to be lawfully arrested for driving under the influence. So you kind of see like two competing factors here. On one hand, a driver's license is a privilege, and we are consenting to a breath test if we are requested to do so by a police officer. And on the other hand, the legislature has said we're not going to just let police officers willy-nilly request breath tests from people. Instead, they must have lawfully arrested a driver for driving under the influence. So in sum, what that means is that in Florida, if you're pulled over for drunk driving, or if you are pulled over for something else and the police have reason to believe that you are driving drunk, they will go through an investigation such as asking you to participate in field sobriety exercises, and then they will make a decision of whether or not to arrest you. Then and only then will you be transported to a police station and you will be asked to take a breath test. So that's the dynamic here in Florida. Now, if you refuse a breath test, there is a penalty of having your driver's license suspended. But of course, if you refuse that breath test, it cannot be used against you in court, or at least they can't use the results of the test against you because there are no results, right? You didn't take the test. A prosecutor might argue that you did not take the test because you knew you were guilty, but at least they can't show a jury a certain blood alcohol content score. If, in contrast, you do take the breath test, then of course those results are admissible at trial and the prosecutor can point to the exact score. Certain scores by law raise a presumption that you are driving while impaired. So if you blow above a 0.08, the judge will instruct the jury that they are to presume that you were driving under the influence of alcohol and that the defendant can overcome that presumption, but the presumption remains there for them to treat as they will. So it's a very critical piece of evidence in a DUI case and a possible DUI trial. Now you might be wondering what exactly is the breath machine and how does it work? And there's actually not a whole lot known about these machines. And the reason for that is that the manufacturers of these machines only sell the machines to law enforcement. And in fact, they refuse to sell it to individuals. They refuse to sell it to universities that are conducting independent research. They will only sell it to law enforcement personnel. And because of that, there isn't a lot of testing and analysis of the reliability of these machines. Now, the machines themselves are big, bulky hunks of plastic that looks very archaic by today's technological standards. And it has a tube that is connected to the back and has a long plastic piece that the police officer has the defendant hold and blow into the machine. And the idea is that the machine is supposed to be able to register the amount of alcohol that is within the certain volume of air or breath that the person is exhaling. If it sounds complicated, it's because it is. If it sounds vague, it's because that appears to be the intentional purpose between the law enforcement agencies and the manufacturers of the intoxilizer. If you have been arrested for a DUI and you participated in the breath test, don't allow this to be a reason for concern. There are a number of rules that the law enforcement officer is required to follow when they administer this breath test. For starters, they have to be licensed as a breath test operator, right? They have to be properly trained and licensed. So if they're not that thing, then we could possibly get the breath test excluded. Likewise, there's a rule that the police officer has to place the defendant in a chair and observe the defendant for 20 minutes to make sure that the defendant doesn't put anything in his mouth or possibly throw up or belch that could impact the amount of alcohol that would normally be detected in someone's breath. Sometimes police officers fail to follow that 20-minute rule. So if you are in a position where you took a breath test, please contact our office and we'd be happy to give you a complimentary consultation. Thank you.